Well, it's time to study The Lord of the Rings. How exciting. If you're going to understand any kind of major work of fantasy, science fiction, even horror to a certain extent, you need to know about this. Joseph Campbell, the hero with 1,000 faces. Campbell quite famously decided on this hero's journey that is really pretty important to understanding a lot of basic narrative structures, particularly mythological structures and the types of narratives that are heavily influenced by mythology. The Lord of the Rings was quite intentionally designed by J.R.R. Tolkien to take on the role of an Anglo-Saxon fantasy mythology folklore, and so he's very consciously operating within established mythological traditions. In order to understand the hero's journey, though, I wanted to break it down into 3 sections, which Campbell does in his book: the departure, the initiation, and the return. This first lecture is going to be on section 1, the departure. Joseph Campbell's famous The Adventure of the Hero, also known as The Hero's Journey. Part 1, the departure. Woohoo! The first phase of the departure is the call to adventure. For Frodo, the call to adventure comes most significantly on the departure of Bilbo, who has reached a landmark birthday. Oftentimes, the call to adventure will occur at these transitionary points in time. If not for the hero, then at least for someone who's close to the hero. In the book, Lord of the Rings, this call to adventure is much more drawn out, as the time period that passes from Bilbo's birthday to the discovery of the ring to Frodo's need to go on the adventure takes place over many years. In the film, Jackson understandably truncates this passage of time to keep the audience interest and to avoid unnecessary aging of the actors. The call to adventure for Bilbo, of course, does take place in both counts when Gandalf discovers the nature of the one true ring. Only when the ring's identity is made known and clarified does Gandalf ask Frodo to go on a quest, a journey particularly, to take the ring and bring it safely to Rivendell. Frodo's call actually has 2 steps. The first one is to keep the ring and be a steward of the ring, since Bilbo has left and Gandalf must leave to do his research. But the true call to adventure is the call for him to take the ring and to keep himself safe. At this point in the novel and in the film, Frodo is not expecting to travel all the way to Mordor, but for a hobbit such as he, the travel to Rivendell is nonetheless very perilous and dangerous. The second phase is called the refusal of the call. This obviously follows the call itself, and the hero attempts to get out of it in any way possible. When Frodo is faced with keeping the ring secret and safe, he's not particularly frightened, nor does he reject the call. He puts the ring away, and he more or less forgets about it. But once the nature of the true ring is revealed, Frodo tries to give it away. He wants Gandalf to take the ring and to take the burden upon himself. Interestingly, Gandalf is thus offered a call to adventure, which he refuses. Gandalf's refusal is somewhat perplexing, but it makes sense when you consider the amount of power Gandalf has at his fingers. If Gandalf were to be corrupted by the ring, he would be an extremely dangerous foe. Frodo, because of his innocence, is the perfect bearer for the ring because he is potentially the one who is least likely to abuse it. Initially, Frodo refuses the journey. He doesn't want to go, he refuses to go, he doesn't want to do it. But as is typical of all heroes, otherwise you wouldn't have a hero story, that refusal eventually becomes acceptance. as Frodo admits, I will do this, I will carry this ring. As you see in Rivendell, this acceptance is really a full acceptance. He isn't simply saying, I will take the ring to Rivendell. He is saying, I will accept the burden of the ring and the burden of what that represents. No hero can accept the call by his or herself, which is why the third stage is supernatural aid. Supernatural aid is one of the more exciting parts of a fantasy narrative or mythology, because this is where the hero gets all the really cool stuff. Now, Frodo receives his supernatural aid in a variety of ways. Initially, he has Gandalf. Of course, Gandalf is going to help him, but as he established in The Hobbit, Gandalf is the kind of leader and mentor who comes and goes as necessary and tries to let the hero develop as much as possible on his own. Later in the narrative, he is given more supernatural aid in the form of Sting, an enchanted blade that's going to help him defeat the forces of darkness. Sting, of course, will be extremely useful and valuable, a pivotal part of the narrative as things progress. He also has the mithril cloak that he receives later. And even further down the line, he's going to receive the aid of the elves. He's going to receive the light now I can't remember what it's called. The star in the jar, the bottle. Very exciting. And he's going to encounter various people along the way. Curiously, one of the supernatural aids is the ring itself. And I think that Tolkien's being quite clever here by having the ring be a source of aid, but also the primary obstacle and problem of the narrative. The hero's journey, as the name implies, means that the hero has to go on some sort of physical, metaphysical, emotional journey, but most often it's physical. And that physical journey really starts with the crossing of the first threshold. Throughout the narrative, Frodo crosses a number of important thresholds: rivers, chasms, the point between different ecosystems, etc. But in the departure phase of the hero's journey, there's always an initial threshold, a threshold where the hero moves kind of outside of his normal sphere. And there's a couple of ways to read how this happens. On the one hand, Frodo, being a very complacent, homey hobbit, there is a threshold that is just the doorstep. Frodo accepts the journey that Gandalf lays before him and is able to leave Bag End and to set forth on the journey. Sam, and we'll talk more about Sam later, but Sam epitomizes this first threshold a little bit better by passing the farthest distance he's ever traveled. And this is largely true for Frodo, but it's emphasized in the film as being a stepping point and a turning point for both of them as they go outside of the realm of Hobbiton. Perhaps more applicable and more symbolic is the Buckleberry Ferry crossing. At that point, they really do cross not only a physical landmark that indicates a movement from one realm into another, it's a point in the narrative where the hobbits lose their innocence because they realize the gravity of the journey they're on. Up until that point, in many ways, they're just kind of having fun. And then they realize with the encounter with the ring wraiths what's actually going on. This threshold crossing is more important for the film than maybe for the novel, because the novel includes other obstacles that the hobbits must face between Bag End and the Inn of the Prancing Pony. Campbell includes a phase called the belly of the whale in the departure section, although this belly of the whale moment can appear at various stages along the hero's journey. It's usually the lowest point of the hero's adventure, when the hero is just about to give up or die or lose everything, lose hope, lose control. And it really is considered kind of a nadir of that progress. Throughout the hero's adventure, the hero encounters many obstacles, some of which are very dire, and low points. But the low point can occur repeatedly, It can occur halfway through the narrative. But Campbell defines the belly of the whale in the departure phase. Perhaps that moment when the hero really has to decide, am I going to stick this out? Am I going to make this work? For The Lord of the Rings, Frodo encounters a different belly of the whale in the novel than he does in the film. The belly of the whale in the novel occurs when the hobbits find their way into the forest, the ancient forest, and are attacked by a wight. Specifically, a barrow wight. This supernatural, unearthly creature almost kills the hobbits when they stumble upon its tomb, and they are saved by Tom Bombadil, a form of supernatural aid that rescues the hobbits and sends them on their journey, better equipped and armed, as the hobbits, other than Frodo, end up with enchanted blades. This is all cut from the film, primarily for length purposes. It would make the Fellowship of the Ring much longer to include all these encounters. And as far as the fan base goes, Tom Bombadil is something of a polarizing character. Some people really like him and some people really hate him. So in the film, the belly of the whale may occur in different locations. It may occur at the end of the Prancing Pony, when Frodo realizes that they're actually being chased and potentially going to be killed by the ring race that are following them. I would say, though, in the film, the belly of the whale occurs when Frodo is injured. When Frodo is stabbed by the ring wraith, the king of the ring wraiths, by the Morgul blade, he descends into the underworld, at least partially, if not fully, as he comes closer and closer to death. As I mentioned before, the belly of the whale can be literal, where there's a literal descent into a cave or a dungeon. Oftentimes the hero is imprisoned, but it can just as likely be symbolic, where the hero descends from the mortal plane into the next life or comes very close to death. Primarily, I think the goal is that the belly of the whale is where the hero must face his own mortality and make a certain choice as to whether to continue the journey or not. Frodo, of course, is saved from the belly of the whale by more supernatural aid as he makes it to Rivendell and is magically cured by Elrond. So this concludes our discussion of the departure phase of the hero's journey. In the future lessons I'll record, we'll talk about initiation and the return, pretty much all in context of Lord of the Rings, so you'll know what to look for as you read the novel and reconsider the films as part of this course.